Ladies and gentlemen, Finland has the most badass military in the whole Europe. I don't know how and why, but let's just go understand how they came through this one. Let's not waste no time, please. Let's go.
This might be Europe's most badass military. Not the biggest, not the richest, not even the flashiest. But if war came knocking on Europe's door, Finland would be the one standing ready. Quiet, cold, deadly efficient.
Really?
Finland has built a fighting force that most countries twice its size would kill to have. So how did a country with barely 5 million people become one of the most feared defensive powers on the continent? Because for Finland, defense isn't optional, it's survival. And they've turned that mindset into
Bro, I never heard much about Finland though. I think it's a whole different country on its own. We're about to find out something about Finland right now. We're about to learn some. Let's go.
Military machine, disciplined, modern, and fiercely motivated. In this video, we're breaking down what makes Finland's armed forces so exceptional and why many believe it could be the most combat-ready force in Europe. Let's start with the numbers, because what Finland lacks in flash, it makes up for in pure strategic muscle. Finland has around 24,000 full-time soldiers. Now that might not sound like a lot, but here's the kicker. The country is able to mobilize around 10 times that amount, up to 280,000 personnel, should it need to. And in the most extreme cases, there are around 900,000 Finnish reservists, all trained and capable of entering combat if required. To put that into perspective...
Bro, what? They're training for? Being reserved for what? Damn. Okay. I won't say they're expecting something bad, but, they're just in case. Just, in case. Okay.
Finland's entire population is about 5.5 million. That means it could theoretically mobilize around 5% of its population for military combat, or more than 16% in the most drastic of situations.
Damn.
And to understand just how big that is, if we apply the same model to the US, it will be like having 55 million American reservists, all ready to call up in times of crisis, such as an invasion of the country. So proportionally speaking, Finland has one of the biggest military forces of any country in the world.
Damn.
And its soldiers are not just men and women with
Bro,
basic...
is that true? Is that true? You telling me they're number one? Okay, maybe, bro. Let me just see.
Training or a rudimentary understanding of warfare. These are people who have undergone rigorous training and preparation. Thus, if called upon, they would know exactly where to go, which unit to join, and what their roles would be. This is, in part, all thanks to Finland's mandatory conscription system. All adult males in the country are encouraged to serve either 165, 255, or 347 days of military service. They can opt for civilian service instead, but a lot of them go the military route. Around 27,000 new conscripts are trained this way each year. Plus, since those who refuse to...
Okay, I understand. So this one here is a must. Is a must for everyone to participate in this one. Like having 1 year of a training, of a military training. Okay, bro, that's cool. That was done over here in France years ago, but it's not a must. You understand? It's not compulsory anymore. Okay, I still love it that way.
Partake in the service face prison sentences. There's a very high enrollment rate. About 80% of all Finnish men complete their military service, which is one of the highest rates of conscription completion in the world.
Wow.
And even though they don't have the same obligation, plenty of women also volunteer. In fact, the most recent application period saw more than 1,400 females submit their applications. As for the training itself, it's rigorous and effective. Conscripts first undergo 6 weeks of basic training before taking on more specialist training tasks related to their assigned role. They can be trained in a wide range of tasks and duties, from handling weapons to the ins and outs of officer duties. There are so many positives to take out of such a system. Firstly, it ensures that a huge percentage of the male population has at least some military knowledge and preparedness for combat. It's also a cost-effective option, especially when compared to other ways of building and maintaining a large military force. In a country like Finland, which doesn't have the biggest of economies, it ranks just 18th in Europe for GDP, that's a very important factor. There's also the fact that a lot of people who complete their conscription gain a much better understanding and appreciation of the military. This kind of hands-on experience teaches them the value of Finland's impressive defenses, and many leave with a renewed sense of pride in the country, which would be of great value if ever Finland needed to call on those same people to fight off an invading army someday. This is actually backed up by real data, as polls show that around 83% of the Finnish population say that they are willing to take up arms to defend their land. For the sake of comparison, only
Bro, I think not everyone is willing, to defend their country. But yeah, it's some kind of a must do for anyone, for any citizen, bro. I know some people they hate their country, but the Finlandese are not like that. I don't think so. That's what you just said. Okay.
about 33% of British people say they are willing to defend the United Kingdom, and rates are similarly low in a lot of other European nations. This is important because the strength of an army isn't just the number of soldiers it has or how much its fighter jets cost. It's also about the willpower of the people. It's about their drive and commitment to the cause, and how willing they would truly be to put their lives on the line in defense of their motherland. Ukraine is a shining example of this. Since Russia's invasion began, the Ukrainian people have shown remarkable levels of fortitude and almost unprecedented strength in their willingness to stay and fight for their land. That's very similar to what we can see in the Finns. And it's hardly surprising that Finns care for their country so much, as it's often voted the happiest place to live in the entire world.
What?
Next, some more impressive.
What? Is it true what I just had over here right now? Like, Finland is the happiest place to live in the entire world. Really? More happier than France? Oh, I was joking though. France is not a happy place to stay. I know that. But man, I'm excited to hear that though. Finland is the happiest place to live in the entire world. You know what? I'm going to do a research about this one. I want to find out. I want to find out how happy, the Finlandese are. I don't even know if they are called the Finlandese or the Finns, like you said. Bro, anyone, you guys understand.
Impressive stats. Finland has hundreds of tanks stocked up and stored away and ready for duty, as well as one of, if not the strongest artillery force in all of Europe. That consists of a whopping 700 howitzers, another 700 heavy mortars, and 100 multiple rocket launchers ready to fend off any aerial assaults. It also has massive stockpiles of ammunition and strong forces on land, in the air, and at sea, making it capable of fighting on all fronts if needed.
Damn.
To be more precise, Finland's army boasts armoured regiments, special ops teams, and its famous Jaeger brigades, made up of specially trained troops who are perfectly suited for winter combat in the swamps and dense forests that make up large parts of the country's terrain. Its navy consists of missile launch ships, mine layers and mine countermeasure vessels, along with amphibious brigades, and its air force has multiple F-35 fighter squadrons, state-of-the-art surveillance systems, and helicopter battalions too. With such strength and depth across land, sea and air, Finland seems well prepared to engage any enemy, no matter how it might engage them. It always has options to defend itself, with some high-end hardware and a lot of highly trained personnel capable of using it to the best of their abilities. All of this is backed up with strong defense agreements with key Western allies, including the US and the UK.
Damn.
And in 2023, Finland officially...
Okay, so these are the people aligning with Finland, the UK and the US, bro. I think, man, they got a solid back. With this two, I think, man, they're pretty good though. They're solid.
became part of NATO, bringing the impressive strength of its military to the alliance. In the words of Finland's own top commander, General Timo Kivinen, on a per capita basis, we have probably the most firepower in Europe. He's not wrong. Finland's military might is extraordinary considering its size, budget, and politically neutral past. And one of the most impressive aspects of all of this is that Finland hasn't had to spend inordinate amounts of money to build its army. In fact, it allocates around 2% of its GDP to military spending, which aligns with NATO standards, but is still relatively low compared to a lot of other countries. The conscription system, as explained earlier, really helps with cost savings. Thanks to that, Finland can call on hundreds of thousands of trained troops, but doesn't have to pay them full-time salaries like many other countries. The Finns have also been shrewd with their spending on equipment, brokering smart deals with their allies and procuring weapons at sensible times to get the best rates. In short, this country has built a brilliant battle force on a budget. It's an incredible achievement. And it's not just a question of having enough guns and ammo to sustain its defenses. Finland also heavily invests in tactics and strategy. It trains its personnel to understand the unique terrain that makes up the Finnish landscape. It prepares its soldiers for battle in harsh, Arctic conditions and guides them in how to make the most of the landscape, using the climate.
Damn, bro, all those trainees, encountering and other stuff are good, really, for a soldier. But I'm still asking, why all this heavy training and learnings? Is it that Finland has been in some bad situation before? Like, bro, in terms of war, maybe it was pretty hard for them. I don't know. Maybe they haven't had one Like, I don't even know. Maybe they're preparing for something, but or preparing for nothing at the same time. I don't even know. Maybe there's something behind this training and every other stuff. Why are they doing all those things? Yeah, that's what I want to know. Why?
And geography to their advantage if ever they have to defend their homeland. Finland, after all, is a land of extremes, where winter temperatures often drop below 0 degrees Fahrenheit,
Damn.
and many regions, like the northern Lapland area, receive dozens of inches of snow annually. Indeed, a large part of the Finnish defense strategy isn't necessarily outmuscling any invaders, but wearing them down, digging in with grit and determination, and making it as difficult as possible for any opposing force to gain ground. It's quite similar in a lot of ways to how Ukraine has had to defend parts of its territory in the wake of the Russian invasion. So even if it couldn't compete with an invading force in terms of numbers of soldiers, tanks, and so on, Finland's military would still have a massive advantage thanks to its training and tactics. Its men and women would always have the upper hand on their own turf. Invaders, even those from similarly snowy and inhospitable locations, could quickly feel overwhelmed by the unpredictability of the weather and the harshness of the terrain.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Finnish soldiers would feel, quite literally, right at home in those same conditions.
He's right.
All in all, the Finnish army is an adaptable, resilient force, and one that many other European nations surely wish they had their own version of, particularly now. But why has Finland decided to put together such an incredible military, a force that is the envy of much wealthier and
That's what I want to know. Why? Why all those preparation, man? I want to understand why.
more prominent nations on the global stage? Well, there are a lot of reasons behind Finland's military spending, decisions and strategies over the years, but a lot of it boils down to one simple thing: the border. To be more precise, the border that Finland shares with Russia. That border runs for around 830 miles in total, and much of it is completely open. There isn't a sea, river, or vast mountain range there to make it very difficult for any invading force to enter. Instead, large parts of the border follow no natural landmarks whatsoever. It simply passes through forests, swamps, and alongside small, sparsely populated towns and villages, with mere handfuls of people living there. Even some of the bigger near-border towns like Jomanski only have a few thousand people. Meanwhile, Finland's biggest city and capital, Helsinki, is home to 1.3 million people. Now, if Russia and Finland were close allies, that massive open border might not be such a big issue.
Yeah.
Plenty of countries have pretty large and open borders, but don't necessarily feel the need to invest hugely in their militaries. However, the relationship between these two countries has not exactly been friendly over the years. Indeed, for a long time, Finland was part of the Russian Empire until it fought for and gained its independence in 1917. The Soviet Union also invaded Finland in the Winter War, which ran from 1939 to 40. That ended with Finland having to give up 11% of its territory to the Soviets.
Damn. You know, wish it started off with this one, bro. I won't even be asking why all those preparation and all that. Damn, bro. First of all, I didn't even know that, there were borders. They were sharing borders with Russia. Damn, you know what that means, bro? Like, damn, you need to be constantly prepared, for real. Damn, no rest. You sharing border with Russia, man, for real. I think that's why all those strategies in learning, in training, in no resting, bro, are constantly put to train. Damn, that's crazy. I understand. Okay, let's just go on.
And later retaliated, launching its own invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941, in what was known as the Continuation War. That war lasted much longer than the first, running until 1944, when the Moscow Armistice brought it to an end. Again, Finland lost some land that time, though it did also regain some of the territory it had previously lost. After the Second World War came to an end, a period of peace began across Europe and beyond. However, the Cold War reared its head, and Finland was one of the countries most affected by that. Given its proximity to Russia and the size of its border, plus the fact that the two nations had a tumultuous past, there was always a persistent fear among the Finnish population that Russia would decide to invade again someday. There hasn't actually been any invasion since then, but the threat has always persisted, and this in large part is what has fueled.
And it's still gonna be there forever, bro. It's still gonna be there. The threat is still gonna be very, very there. So
The Finnish defense strategy for many decades, dating back to the post-World War II era. Back then, Finland's military wasn't such an outlier. It was more in line with the norm. Lots of countries across Europe had big reservist forces and spent heavily on military equipment and procurement. They had plenty of tanks and artillery stored away just in case war broke out again. And many also maintained conscription systems for a long time, so they had lots of trained people among the population that they could call on if ever they needed to. However, by the 1990s, attitudes had started to soften. There had been a long period of peace for the most part, even if Russia still posed a certain level of threat, especially to the nations of Eastern Europe. The idea of invasion and full-scale warfare seemed distant and difficult to imagine for many, particularly those in Western Europe like the UK, Germany and Spain. The need for big armies and expensive defense systems no longer seemed like such a pressing concern. So many countries switched things up a bit. They focused more on creating smaller expeditionary or mobile forces to operate in select locations around the world, rather than on a larger, domestic force to defend their borders. They also stopped conscription, and many of them also sold off a lot of their old military hardware. The Finns did none of that. They persisted with conscription and maintained their massive reservist force. They kept their military spending consistent through the 1960s and 70s, before building it up to over $1 billion by the end of the 80s, and averaging around $2 billion in the 90s. What's more, when other countries started selling off their supplies, Finland actually bought up large amounts at discount rates. It purchased 100 T-72 tanks from Germany, for example, strengthening its defenses even more and continuing that budget-friendly tactic we touched on earlier. Even to military experts at the time.
Okay, now I understand why they are the most badass military in Europe, bro. Like, the country is some kind of small, like in the map, you guys understand. But, man, they're badass, for real. Like, they're ready for real. I can say that.
The Finnish approach may have seemed confusing or wasteful. Indeed, for the early parts of the 21st century, Finland's focus on its military was often seen as outdated, old-fashioned, and even unnecessary. Other countries moved away from the large-scale reservist force model in favor of approaches that seemed more modern. They didn't feel the need to have conscription systems or keep huge stocks of ammo, tanks, and other military equipment. It appeared confusing and wasteful to them that Finland would keep up with its more traditional military outlook. However, recent events have proven that the Finnish approach may have been the smartest one all along. With Russia's invasion of Ukraine, some of the biggest countries in Europe have been scrambling to strengthen their defenses. We've heard some of Europe's biggest leaders speaking about the need to build a European army, and countries like the UK, France and Germany have been called out for their perceived weakness and lack of preparedness in certain aspects. Meanwhile, let's look at Finland. It has a relatively huge military, tons of supplies, and enough ammo to keep fighting and defending its territory for long periods, while other countries barely have enough to fight for more than a week. Now, at a time of concerning Russian hostility, Finland appears by far to be the most prepared, aside from Ukraine, in terms of being able to defend its land and present a serious deterrent to would-be invaders. And the Finns are not stopping there. The conscription program continues to train recruits each and every year, with more volunteers than ever since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Thanks to that, there are entire generations of combat-ready personnel to call on. Finland also continues to spend billions annually on defense, with plans to increase from $6.8 billion to $11.5 billion by 2032.
Damn, bro. The Finns, like he said, are much ready than I thought. You know, the European countries, like France, is counting on the UE for in case of trouble. You understand? So France is not like counting on them only, but they're counting on the UE as a whole. You understand? But Finland is just like, okay, I'm putting this one on myself. I need to count on myself first because, bro, I need to get prepared. I need to get ready for any kind of issues, bro, before wanting to bring my alliance into this one. You understand? Damn, okay. The strategy is some kind of good. It's really good. Let me know that. You know, that's the best option for me.
Country has also recently upgraded its Air Force fighter jets and regularly seeks new ways to defend itself. It has invested strongly in cyber defenses, for example, to ward off digital and online attacks that could cripple less prepared nations. In a way, it's thanks to Russia that Finland has built and maintained this incredible military force. Having that kind of threat right on the doorstep has kept the fear and concern in Finnish minds throughout the ages. Other countries have the benefit of distance between themselves and Russia, or other potential enemies. Many also have more secure and smaller borders that are easier to defend. Finland, however, has been effectively forced to build a remarkable military through its geography and history. It had no other option, as it's almost like the Cold War never fully ended there. It's worth noting also that while it might not have one of the biggest populations in the world, Finland is one of the largest land masses in Europe. It has miles of relatively unoccupied territory, with a population density of just 48 people for every square mile, which could make it a great target for any invading force seeking to gain a lot of ground and access to important resources. A landmass like that needs an adequate, appropriate defense system, and that's exactly what the Finns have built. Certainly, when compared to European countries excluding Ukraine, its military is pretty much unmatched. It's remarkably prepared and more than capable of defending Finnish territory. Few military forces around the world can boast of units as well trained at maneuvering and fighting on their land than the Finnish Jaeger brigades, and even fewer have so many reservists among the populace. Let's not forget that this is a country that doesn't even rank in the top 20 of Europe in terms of its population, and it only just scrapes into the top 20 in terms of GDP. Make no mistake, if ever Russia decides to invade Finland, it will be a David versus Goliath battle if we look at the numbers alone. Russia would have a much larger force, with estimates of around 1.3 million active personnel and 2 million more in reserve. Russia also spends far more money on its military and has huge numbers of tanks, missile launchers, jets and so on, though these are being depleted in the fight with Ukraine. However, while the Finnish force would be smaller, it would surely be more than a match for the Russian one, or any other invaders.
It will be more than a match because, yeah, the Russians are much more in numbers, right? But the Finns are going to fight with their hearts, you understand, bro? And we all know what that means, you understand, bro? It's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough. The Russians know that these Finns are pretty ready, you understand? So they know what awaits them. So I think they don't dare to.
In terms of tenacity, tactics, and preparation. And that, more than anything else, is what truly makes the Finnish military the most badass in all of Europe.
Okay.
A lot of other countries across the continent and beyond can certainly learn a thing or two from the Finnish approach, as the country's defence force is a shining example of what can be done, even without a huge population or massive budget to work with. Now go and check out Ukraine Can't Believe What Finland Just Did. Insane.
Okay. Bro, I didn't see this one coming for real. For real. I have never thought of this once in my life, that Finland might have the most badass military in Europe. Never could I have thought of that. But I'm incredibly shocked. But I like it though. I love the way they'll be prepared. You know, the mentality they have is pretty good. You know. Well, bro, I'm shocked. But at the same time, it's good. I learn every day, you guys know. Well, thanks to you all, ladies and gentlemen. I think, bro, this one, yeah, must stick with me for a very long time. Well, thanks to you all, ladies and gentlemen. It's your boy, Easy Boy. Please, keep safe, my G's. Don't play. And maybe I'm going to catch you on my next episode. Who knows? Peace out, my boys and girls.